Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sideline Eye podcast. We have a different podcast now this week, and hopefully for the next few weeks, as we invite one club player every week to tell us about the best team they have played with from the players they have played with. So today we're going to discuss Jack Grugan's dream team, and Jack is telling us of the best team he has played with Ballymacnab, Armagh, and St Mary's University all included. So Jack, thanks very much for joining us.
Well, Sean, glad to be on.
So we'll start off, Jack, obviously, as we named the three teams that you've sort of picked your dream team off. We'll start with the goalkeeper, obviously. You played with him at university level.
So I suppose it wasn't an easy decision. Played with quite a few good goalkeepers, but ultimately went for Niall Morgan. Played with him in college with the Marys, and I suppose his reputation speaks for itself. He played for Ireland. He's Tyrone. He's one of the best goalkeepers in Ireland for what he can do, his kickouts and scoring from distance. So I think that probably speaks for itself. I think he's also he's an all-rounder. I think he plays outfield for his club, and probably rips it up in the Tyrone Championship as well. So it shows how good a footballer he is. I just playing in some Mary's with him. It was like his kickouts and the accuracy and just how driven he was. You can see why he has made it to the top. Like how kind of intense he was in training. Like he hated you scoring a goal past him. Even in training, like which I suppose shows his attitude and his mindset to be one of the best around. Again, that probably wasn't an easy decision. Left another few good goalkeepers out, but sure, that's every position, as we're going to probably find out as this goes on.
And you say he wasn't happy when there was many goals went past him. Would you got many?
I always got a few past him, yeah. I'd say Niall will agree too, yeah. But yeah, no, he that was one thing. I remember first training session, maybe just doing a shooting drill with Paddy Tally or something, and he just hated, even in training, just hated people slotting it past him. Like, would just be so annoyed, So he's a good fella now, good player too.
We'll move on to your full back line now, and you've played with these fellas in a couple of different teams. So obviously all three Armagh, you played with James Morgan and St Mary's, and obviously Ryan Kennedy is your own club as well.
Yeah, all still playing in the Armagh panel. To be honest, it's probably one of the strongest lines I think that I've picked. And it probably I'd say it's the strongest, and it probably is the easiest one that I picked as well. I'll start with James. First played with James in St Mary's, and obviously he had a reputation, I suppose, coming in at that stage. He may be a couple of years older than me, but he was in my class in college, so we'd be fairly close with him from that. And we actually teach in the same school now in Dundalk. So we'd see a lot of each other between school and friendship, and then Armagh as well, football. So, obviously James's name speaks for itself and what he's done, with Cross and with Armagh, like in terms of man marking and aggression, and just coming out, I suppose, to stop other teams' main threats. Like he's as good as there's been for the last maybe 10 years or so. I suppose he's been unlucky with injuries and stuff that probably have hampered him slightly, but even there with Armagh last year, watching on, you could see that he was probably back to himself, and I'm sure he'd be hoping for a big season ahead this year, with Armagh, and then into Brendy Donaghy. Again, I was, and I know probably the same as yourself, Sean, massive Armagh fan growing up, like all my life. Just Armagh was everything, travelled everywhere, and uncles and everything, just Armagh in the brain, and loved watching Brendy, back, when he was a bit younger. But like watching him fall back, just nullify threats, and you just knew how solid a player he was. And then obviously going into the panel 4 years ago, just learning from him, just marking him, and it's not a simple job when you're in the training match and Brandy comes in to pick you up. He'll give it to you anyway you want. If you want to get physical with him, he's happy out. if you want to try and play ball, again, he's happy out. And again, a real gentleman, like a really good fella who was never afraid, and is still currently, wouldn't be afraid to, like, after a training session there, say he was marking me, he would be like, right, you done really well there, or why did you do this? And always really using his experience, and he's a brilliant person to have around the team, and obviously he still has a lot to offer us this year for Armagh, in my opinion. And then the last one there is Ryan, our own clubmate. And obviously we know how good a player Ryan is. I think, to be honest, I'm going to struggle to describe how good Ryan is. I think you have to play with him to know, or to try and mark him, or to try and play against him. I think Ryan's career started out as a forward. He was speedy, wiry corner forward, and he was very good up there too. I remember playing with him and watching him, me and him both playing full forward line. And he gradually moved back, I suppose, to centre half forward and midfield and centre half back, and then ultimately he got man marking jobs in his past few years. Now he would still say that he's not a full back, and that he should be further out the field, and I tend to agree with him maybe at times. But in terms of Ryan, like, whatever, and I've said this about the other boys, they're all similar in that way. Whatever way you want it, like if you want to get physical with him and try and get into it, like, he's more than happy there. If you want to just play football, again, he's more than happy. If you let him go, even if he's the full back, if you let him start to play, he's that good on the ball, and he's that creative, and he will really hurt you. And he could no problem. He could play half forward, or he could play midfield, and that's for Armagh too. He's just that talented a player, I suppose, as you know yourself. So, like a very, very strong full back line, who are all have similar traits, but I suppose are all fairly unique then as well. But no, a good solid full back line. I wouldn't really want any of them picking me up.
I think it's noticeable there, Jack, that you've sort of picked three man markers really that you would know both in matches and training, and you've sort of said there that they can mix it, so they can sort of change their game to suit the forward they're marking. I suppose that's the biggest compliment that you could give a cornerback, a man marking defender.
Absolutely, yeah, and like they are, and I suppose the three boys there have proven it. How good they are at picking up different players, whether it's the small speedy guy who, they maybe let that person, they'd be very good at reading it and letting that boy have the ball and win it, but then maybe not letting him get into a score zone, or if it's go and mark the bigger man, like they're all happy to go and tussle and get physical and break it away and play in front, and they're just, the three of them they're just very . intelligent footballers, like.
We'll move on to your half back line then, Jack.
No,
and you have three men here. You talked about Ryan Kennedy playing in the forwards. I think these three boys have all played in the forwards as well at some stage in their careers. Aidan Falker more famously last year in the county final. But tell us a bit about these three men.
Yeah, that's the trend. 6 attacking defenders I've got, and the goalkeeper who can play forwards as well. God, I think you can tell I like attacking football, Sean. Firstly, I'll start with Mickey Bayon. I suppose Mickey's been our captain in the NAB this past 5 or 6 years, maybe more. But Mickey's a very, very good footballer. Like a very talented, very smart. He's a head-up footballer who wants to lift his head and kick it, and has a very strong belief that the quickest way or the best way to play football is to attack. I suppose I love that. Mickey's coming down the right hand side, and he is looking up, seeing can he kick it into our forwards. So I'm not in any way taking away from his footballing ability, but I suppose there are probably better. I've probably left out more talented actual players that I've played with, but in terms of leadership and like being a driving force and being an example and just being an overall leader of our club, I couldn't not pick Mickey, to be honest. He has been a massive part of our, I suppose, relative success with the club winning the league and county finals and that. Obviously we didn't get over the line on both occasions, but Mickey has been a massive force in I suppose in Ballymacnab becoming a bigger club in the past maybe 10 years. So I just had to put him in. I suppose then next is Aidan Farker, and again another man who, I suppose, as we've seen in the county final for Mahary, like an absolute baller. Anywhere you want to put him. I played with Aidan in St Mary's too. For 3 years. He was the year above me in college. So I knew all about him then. He used to play centre half back or centre half forward for the college as well. But just an absolute athlete. Like, I suppose you can even see from that photo, he's in serious shape. Like, physically can just match it any way you want. And again, like, he man-marked Michael Murphy last year whenever, I suppose, Donegal beat Armagh quite convincingly. But I think if you watch that game back, he had a very, very good game on Murphy. And then he can then flip it, and he can go and be such a ball winning and such a handful of full forward for his club. Just a seriously talented player, and also another fella who is extremely driven and focused and, always trying to learn and get better all the time. So again, he was a fairly easy shout. Just it was where to put him was, I suppose, the thing. And then on to another man then, Paddy McBride. So again, played in college with Paddy for the full 4 years. Firstly, a great fella, like a massive character in the changing room. I don't know if that's just that West Belfast thing or whatever, but he's just a very infectious personality who would have had a big influence in our changing room. And then just in terms of footballing ability, like, I think he's been playing for Antrim since he's maybe 16, 17. He could have 10 years under his belt at county football level. And again, a seriously good athlete, very, very quick, very good at playing, I suppose, in that more defensive system and breaking out and getting on the ends of scores. But like, even there, I've noticed this past few years with Antrim, I suppose he's worked on himself and he's taken frees and he's more responsible for, the scoring end of things. So again, a very, very talented player who, again, I felt definitely had to be in my team.
I think the likes of Paddy McBride there, Jack, he's probably one of the most underrated players in Ulster, just because Antrim maybe don't be in the limelight as much.
100%, Sean. And there definitely are players like him who don't get the recognition that they probably deserve. Like, if he was from Armagh or Tyrone or Monaghan, like, he'd be a starter. Like, it's just because in Antrim they're maybe just not performing at the level. But like, I'd say without him, and maybe a few others, they would maybe be struggling a bit more. Like, but you can see from watching Antrim games and I suppose playing against them a few years ago in McKenna Cup and stuff. He seems to be a big leader now of that Antrim team, and I wouldn't be surprised if like we see them start to move up out of Division 4 again under their current management team. Because from playing in college in Belfast, there's a lot of talent there in Antrim and around it, and I suppose it's just a matter of working out all the pieces of the puzzle really and getting it together for them. But he'll definitely be a big driving force for them in the next few years.
Moving on to your midfield then, Jack. With an all-club man, obviously, in Park Ribbon, and then you've now Grimley that you would have played with Armagh.
Yeah, I suppose I'll start with Niall. Niall was actually in my same class with me in school, so we would have been friendly whole way growing up through secondary school in Katy and played there. And Niall actually played full back on our school team up until maybe fourth year or so. I think he'll admit himself one day against Downpatrick he was full back, and the full forward scored 6 goals or something off him, and that was the end of the full back career then. So he slowly started to move up the pitch. Niall was one, again, always so skillful, like so skillful. And again, I played soccer with him growing up as well, and whenever we were in school, he played for Cliftonville, like, and that was such a big thing at the time. You know, we were all Armagh City and stuff, so he was always a level above in terms of his skill, but he wasn't that big. He hadn't grown probably at the rate that the rest of us had at the same speed, and he left school probably in 5th year, and again very skillful, but probably just wasn't going. You wouldn't have said he's going to become the athlete that he is now. And then I remember it must have been maybe over the summer, didn't see Niall, and bumped into him again, and next I was like, whoa, like the size of this fella, like massive, and going, holy God. And you know, he I suppose then he just started to come into his own then, and he just found, you know, he really found his own way. And now, like, in terms of fetching a ball and athletic ability, he's as good as I've played with. Do you know, there, like, he's wearing the Madden jersey. That's, you know, last year playing against him, if you go and try and fetch with Niall in the air, like, he's so powerful, he's such a big spring, he's just so high up in the air that, you know, you're very rarely, you know, getting near him in the air. And I personally, you know, he was in the Ireland squad that went to Australia there a few years ago, and like, I was massive for him, you know. And I think he would admit himself he learned lots about himself then. But I still think there's so much more in him. You know, I believe in the next few years, Armagh fans, and I suppose Madden, have seen plenty with him too. You know, he's done wonderful things for them, but I still think he hasn't hit his ceiling for Armagh. And I suppose he had the knee injury last year, but I think it was Derry he came on against, wasn't it? Maybe in Celtic Park, and he changed the game, really, didn't he? And that was with maybe, you know, a ligament injury in his knee. You know, he wasn't right. I really think if he can get a run at it and get form, that, like, Niall, it could be one of the best midfielders, you know, in Ireland. Like, that is how highly I rate, you know, his ability, like, and off both feet, such a strong runner. You know, once he gets opened up running and gets into stride, he's next to impossible to get him stopped. You know, so, like, I really hope to see the very, very best of Niall in the next 2-3 years for Armagh. I suppose that leads me on then to Park, to Pluto, as we call him. Again, I think in terms of, for us, for Ballymacnab, in the last, I suppose, 10 years or whatever, becoming a Division 1 senior team and starting to improve year on year. You know, without him, without Park, we probably wouldn't be the team that we are. In terms of us around the middle, like, we've never had a massive, big, tall 6'4" midfielder, maybe like Niall there beside him. But what Park lacks in height, you know, he doesn't lack in bravery and ability to catch a ball. Like, he's caught some ball in senior matches and stuff out over players, and you're just, it's ridiculous that he can get his hands to it and hold on to it. And he has been a real driving force for us. Like, his running power, his fitness levels, like, in terms of fetching the ball, turning, kicking it, and it might come into me, and there he is. He's off the shoulder, like, he's up and down the pitch, and he has been a massive figure for us in the last number of years. So again, really just had to include him because of how much of an effect he's had for us at the club, and, you know, I suppose had for me, another player who likes to lift his head and kick it. So again, I'd be happy with that. He's always one who is the head up, looking to play the full forward line. So again, a very, 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 very good player.
And then your half forward line, Jack, I suppose centre half forward sort of picks itself.
We'll not talk too much about that. I think I think everybody, I suppose, who would listen to your podcast knows the prowess and the ability levels of Rory, and I suppose I see behind the scenes the work that he puts in. You know, that didn't happen by chance, and I suppose he's been doing it now for over 10 years. I suppose he was on that Armagh minor team that won the All-Ireland, and surprisingly, the low numbers of that team actually who fully made it through. You know, there's maybe a few who have been on the squad but have dropped away, but like, the work that he puts into his game, even now, and I know we're in lockdown and we can't train. We're like, myself and him are in the one family bubble, so we can train together and stuff. But I see the work that he puts in away from the limelight, to his skills and his fitness and strength and everything. It's no surprise to me he's doing what he's doing, and I think he's been a massive player for Armagh in the past few years, and he will continue to be for as long as he's around. And then obviously with the NAB, sure, we know his prowess there, and how much of an influence he has on us. And I'm sure, well, I know for a fact that he'd be like myself and would still carry the burden of the two county finals. And I'm sure he would like to put that right in the next few years, if at all possible. I suppose the man on to the other side of him, Ryan Johnson. I actually, the two wing half forwards was somewhere where I struggled, or it's probably the only area of the field where I had to really start thinking, and it was more the Ryan one. Like, unbelievable player. Like, I talked about a right few of my players picked so far about athletic ability, but in terms of actual athletics and running style and technique and speed and pace, I've never met anyone like Ryan. Played with him in St Mary's, like, just a scary turn of pace and power and running at a high speed for such a long time that it is kind of freaky. And I suppose I've watched a lot of Kilcoo and even Down this past number of years, and I suppose more Kilcoo because they've been so successful. But that move where he gets the ball and he has it in the one hand, but he puts his back to his defender, and he's kind of looking over his shoulder to see where he is, and he just dips and goes. Like, he's done it since college. He must have done it since he's a youngster, and you've seen it in St Mary's. And you know what he's doing, but he's just that fast that you can't get near it. And I think, like, in terms of a half forward, like, if I'm picking a team for what would you want your half forward to be able to do, well, you'd want them to be able to do what Ryan Johnson can do, and that's, I suppose that athletic, like, freakish pace that can just really, really hurt teams, And then I suppose on the other side of a man, and it's not, again, this is maybe a bit like the GA All-Stars. I'm fitting someone in here who probably wouldn't want to play number 12, and I wouldn't pick him as number 12, but I had to get him in my team. And I had him in corner forward, but you'll see my full forward line in a minute that I wouldn't really want any of those three boys coming out, so trust Brian to go ahead and do it. Brian's influence on me, I can't really speak highly enough of it, Sean, to be honest. I came into our senior team at 16, and Brian was without Brian McCone, I suppose Ballymacnab would not be where they are today, and that goes right back to from 1999 in the junior, like up to the early 2000s, through that 2016, like, won the intermediate and got beat in Ulster. Like, he was their main forward, their main scoring threat, and if Brian didn't get 4 or 5 from play and then 4 or 5 frees every day, Ballymacnab were beat. And he carried the team for so many years. I don't mean that as a slight to any of the rest of the forwards there. Obviously, there was a lot of talented boys too, but until Rory and Gavin and Ryan came along, then they maybe started to carry that scoring burden off them a bit. But in terms of just influence on me, like, I could not leave him out. Like, such a talented player. Like, and I suppose as the years went on, he changed his game. So he recognised that he'd lost his pace, and that in terms of being that ball winning corner forward and being reliant to get all the scores, that just didn't suit anymore. But so smart, like how he saw the game. He always had extra time. Like, the greatest players seemed to have extra time in the ball, and Brian was one who just always seemed to be free. Like, and even when the best markers went and marked him this past few years, and again he's slowed up and he's been unlucky with injuries, and that's probably just getting that bit older. But he just always found pockets of space, and I I suppose what I really loved is that me and him had a really good connection. Like, he was always trying to find me with the ball, and was, again, always trying to work the ball closer to goal into the danger zone, and like has been a massive part of Ballymacnab history in the last 15, 20 years, never mind the last 10. So, like, and again, was in the Armagh panel, maybe on 2 different occasions, and just a bit of luck, and things probably didn't go his way. And then he was probably up against seriously good forwards, the likes of Stephen McDonald and Ronan Clark and them boys and all over there, like generational talents, and he probably just come up against that. But without a doubt, was one of the best forwards in Armagh football for a long, long time. And I'm not sure, but I'd say his scoring record for Ballymacnab over the last 15 years, I'd say it would be very scary high, so I couldn't leave Brian out either.
And then the full forward line then, Jack, these are the boys that positions you would be fighting with. So obviously Jerome Johnson, St Mary's, Andrew with Armagh, and Gavin with the club.
Yeah, I'll start with Jerome. Again, played with in St Mary's for the 4 years. And again, another man whose, I suppose, his prowess or his name maybe goes before him as well in terms of ability. He, like, just a ruthless finisher, like just so cutthroat, like just going for the jugular all the time. Like, Jerome doesn't do anything on the pitch that isn't trying to get a score or to hurt the opposition. There's never a time when he's dilly-dallying and just seriously operating at such a high level. I think, he probably hasn't shown it for down, like, on a massively consistent basis. He never went on a massive run, but like, I think last year, I know Calvin came back and beat them, but in the first half, he was up in the athletic grounds last year. He was absolutely unplayable from Calvin. He nearly had them beat at the gate on his own, and he showed glimpses of that. And I know now for Kilcoo, he's been one of the reasons that they've went on this run of whatever amount of down titles in a row, and obviously they were beating the All-Ireland final, but like, in terms of speed, strength, like, he's not massive at height, but he's seriously strong. He's so quick, he's powerful, he's a wicked left foot. I kicked around like a number of times with him, just messing around, and like, Jerome was a seriously good left foot. So again, like, another man, if you wanted that speedy inside man, like, that's the sort of hybrid that I'd be going for in Jerome. Leads on full forward then, I suppose is Andrew. Someone like that I would be directly competing with Armagh, but I've absolutely I've no problem in putting Andrew in the team. He, I suppose, as a full forward, he's someone that, and I'm maybe only back into the panel this year, and we don't know what this year's going to look like in terms of league format and amount of games and stuff. And I don't know how much I'll get to play with him or what the story might be. But like, from my previous few years in the panel, like, in terms of Andrew, I think Armagh fans have only seen a little glimpses here and there of him. Like, he's been so unlucky with injuries, and like, his hamstrings and stuff have just given so much bother. And another thing that I would say about Andrew is, like, the work that he puts in. People might think, oh, he gets injured because he works harder than anybody in terms of gym and rehab and trying to get back, and he keeps coming back and back and back after all these injuries. And hopefully this year, whenever we get the green light to go, he'll be ready to go and will stay injury free. But in terms of Andrew as a full forward, someone who I have really tried to learn off, his movement is second to none. Like, he's not lightning quick, but he's just a step ahead. And because he's a step ahead of everybody else, he looks like he's more time, and he's always in the right place. And I suppose that is the biggest compliment I can pay for him, is that his movement and his ability to see where is there space to run into. And then also, like, his ball winning ability. Like, he was a midfielder. Like, I would say personally, if it wasn't for the injuries, that Andy could have been a midfielder or like a centre half forward just because of his ball winning in the air. Like, he's so good. But he, in terms of like his handling, and like I say, it's more so his movement. It's unselfish. It's always like to get in the right positions to either get it for himself or to put someone else in the right position. And I think if we at Armagh are gonna be successful this year, I suppose Andrew being fit and firing on all cylinders would be a massive help to that. And then I suppose that leads me to the last player in corner forward, and played a lot with Gavin, obviously over the last number of years, a few years in with Armagh as well, but mostly with the club. Gavin is a serious operator. I think, again, in the county, he was maybe there a long time and showed glimpses here and there, and maybe didn't get a run at it. And then it was that year, was it 2017 maybe that Gavin had? Yeah. Where he actually didn't start. He didn't start the Down game. He didn't actually. That was my first year in the panel, and he didn't play any. He maybe played 10 minutes in the National League, and whatever happened, he just hit the run of form, and that was the best I've ever seen him that year. And he come on against Down. I know Down beat Armagh in Newry that day, but he was brilliant. And then he played every game in the back door the whole way through that good run. And he was brilliant. He was as fit as I've seen him. He was as strong as I've seen him. He was just as ruthless. But playing with Gavi at the club, me and him have played inside forwards together and in the forward line for, again, as long as I've been there. And such a goal getter, like such a threat to the goal, like with pace and power, like the strength of Gavin. And again, people might underestimate it. It's only until you go in and play against him and mark him that you realise how strong he is. Just his ability to hold you off with one arm, is incredible. I suppose that's the probably ignorant farmer strength in him. But he has been a very good, like me and him would have a fairly good understanding in there at this stage. And he, again, another reason has been why Ballymacnab have we've come quite good in the last number of years. But again, on his day, fairly, I can't picture anybody who can mark him when he's really at it. Because if you want to get physical with him, he's more than happy. If you want to try and mark him for speed, he's more than happy. And it's a bad decision to leave someone one-on-one with Gavin inside, because he's going to hurt you.
We'll move on, Jack, to your sub bench, and that's a pretty good sub bench to have. I think you have a few men in here that would be pushing for a starting place, definitely in your team.
Yeah, I suppose, as I said to you in the text messages, there's probably people looking at this sub bench going, "Oh, well, he's better than him," and such. But I suppose I went for a starting team who I played with a lot. So I suppose you can see Jamie Clark there, Kieran Mcgeary there. I think those two men would probably get into the team somewhere if it came down to it. But I probably didn't just play that as much with them. So I suppose I picked a team that I played mostly with, I suppose, all of the club boys, the Samary's fellas I played with them, and then the Armagh boys. There's maybe a bit of an overlap there between college, and so I be the first to admit I haven't played as much for Armagh as I would have liked. So hopefully in the next year or two I can maybe change my team around a bit. But I went for boys who I've played the most with, but again, there's probably more than this that I've missed out. Who between Armagh and Samary's and the club, but it's very hard to include everybody. But so there's Blaine Hughes, Blaine's progression. I played with Blaine in under-21s in Armagh, and his progression to the keeper that he is now is a credit to him. His kickouts and just his ability. He's a seriously good keeper. And I suppose I left off the list there Conor McGivern, our own keeper at the club. Conor was again Armagh under-21s with me, and in my opinion, if it wasn't for maybe a bad shoulder injury, he might have got a county run at one stage there a few years ago. He was playing that well. So I suppose I can't leave Connor out of that equation. I've Chris Lahern Copper, a stalwart of our team, a cornerback. I'm sure plenty of Armagh club players recognise Chrissy. A seriously good man marker, and probably a much better footballer than people who from the outside would give him credit for. Seriously smart, like not just a man marker, stop you, and not like Chrissy, and especially over this past number of years, has been someone who has, got much better at being on the ball and attacking and, making smart decisions. So again, he was someone I definitely thought about. Man next to him, Harry Lahern. Again, played with Harry in college, and I suppose I'd be friendly with Harry too. But someone who just so unlucky, like this back injury that he's had. I met Harry, I suppose, when I was 18, starting uni, and he had back trouble then. And I think he has missed all of last year with it, and I'm not sure if he's back. It is so serious. But I think he got himself to a place there with Tyrone for a few years where he was really starting to show what he can do. Really tough player. Again, he can play half back. He played cornerback for St Mary's for a while, half forward. He scored a goal against Donegal a few years ago there, like a seriously good player, and just so unlucky with injury. And hopefully, for his sake, I suppose for Tyrone people's sake, they'll see him back playing soon. Next, I suppose, is Stefan, is Soupy. Such a talented player. Like, again, both feet. He's big. He's 6'2". He's so strong. He's so fast. He's powerful. Like, again, ruthless finisher, and just, I suppose, has an aura about him. He just brings a confidence to you when you're playing with him. You just, I don't know, you feel comfortable with him around you, and he's another man toyed with putting in the team. He's obviously the captain at Armagh at the minute, and that's no surprise. Like, he's a seriously talented player. Next then is Barrio Hagen. I suppose Barry, again, very friendly with from college. And in St Mary's, playing with him, I saw these glimpses of what he's currently doing now with Down and Clonduff. He would have been a running joke. He would have been an SOS man, so that means shoot on sight. So we would have given him a lot of abuse of being an SOS, being a shoot on sight man, and he probably would have been guilty of doing it from ridiculous areas. But he seems to have he's evolved, and he's really matured, and I suppose he's been in the Down panel now 4 or 5 years, and you can see his ability now coming to the fore for them, where it was Fermanagh, wasn't it, last year in the championship, where he maybe kicked 4 or 5 points, an absolute brilliant scores, both feet, raw pace, and just a good footballer. That's simple as that. Next then, of Big Ethan. Again, played with Ethan in Armagh under 21s for 2 years, and then in the Armagh panel with him. Another man who'd be very like nearly Lumley, in that I don't think we've seen the best of him for Armagh, and I don't think he'd mind me saying that. But Ethan's ability is freakish. Like, there's nothing he can't do. Like, in terms of, he could play midfield, he could play anywhere in the half forward line, he could play anywhere in the full forward line. Like, an absolute, he's the biggest kick of a left boot I've ever seen in my life. He kicked the ball over one day in training from the halfway line. I'm not joking. Like, he is a seriously talented player, and again, with a bit of luck and a good bit of form, could really be a big force for Armagh this year and the next few years, consistently, and be, really nail down a starting spot somewhere. Then Kieran Mcgeary, Horse, I suppose the 2 years there with Armagh, again, another man I idolised, like, in terms of just being a leader and a warrior and a dog, and like all of those traits. And like, there he's wearing that number 6, that tenacious, tough half back. But then actually in his last year with Armagh, he then flipped it and he went full forward, and he was effective in there, which is, I suppose, a credit to how good a footballer he actually is and how talented he was as a player. And I suppose now, he's in our management team, and I've seen him. He managed Mayo Bridge last year, and I was impressed with his prowess. And then obviously the Armagh under 17s. Like, you can see that he is a seriously smart and a really deep thinker about the game of football, and that he will go far in the management end of things, I think, too, to match his playing prowess. And then next time is Jamie Clark. I think don't need to say much about Jamie. Everybody knows how talented he is, how special a player he is. Just unique. And in terms of just his movement, and just being so ruthless and crafty in front of goal, you would have seen stuff in training and you're just like, whoa, how did he get that? How did he do that? How did he finish from there? I don't need to say much more about Jamie. He doesn't need to hear. He knows how good he is. And another man I probably forgot about later on was Kieran Mcgeary. He played with him in Samash for 3 years. Again, his prowess with Tyrone this past number of years, and how he's just a guaranteed starter now, either half back or half forward. Just such a good player. So much energy, good left foot, fit, fast. Definitely someone I thought about. Definitely a very talented boy. And then the last man in there, I suppose he's definitely not last. I think out of all of the players not picked, he was maybe the one who was closest to getting in, to be honest. I think Greg's a phenomenal footballer. I really do. Played with him in under 21s and then in with Armagh. There's nothing he can't do. And I suppose he'll get a big head if he hears me saying this about him, but like, there is genuinely nothing he can't do. He could play corner forward for Armagh if he wanted. Like, both footed, like skillful off both feet, has a good football brain, is very brave, is very tough. And sure, now he's like, he can man mark someone, he can play wing half back. Again, like, just a really, really good player who's going to have a big Armagh career for the next number of years as well. Just a very talented boy.
We'll just see your full time now here, Jack. So that's all the boys that made it, obviously, and we've spoke about all of them. And just to finish up, I have a couple of quick fire, probably unfair questions on you, given the quality that you've picked in your team. But I suppose the first one we'll go for is, we talked about how versatile your defence was, but for you being full forward for all them teams you played for, who was the toughest man that you felt was coming into mark you? Who was the toughest? Who was the one that you definitely didn't want to coming into full back?
Yeah, tough, because they're all talented. I think, like, even Aidan Falker, as we've seen, Michael Murphy can do a seriously good man marking job. Obviously, James's prowess in terms of man marking, how good a job he's done of that for the past number of years. I spoke earlier of Brendy, that he can mix it any way you want and has marked some of the best forwards around and done a job on them. But I'm going to go with my own clubmate. I'm going to go with Ryan. People, I don't think people in Armagh have, because Ryan's only into the panel a few years, and I don't think he's got the chance to fully show all of his ability yet. I think he has this past maybe 18 months, 2 years. He's become a fairly regular starter. But I said earlier, any way you want it with Ryan, he'll give it to you, and you're not getting it easy. If you want to just play football, and he will hurt you. He'll get on the ball and he'll go forward. Like, say, he used to be the corner forward or the midfielder. Like, he's so good on the ball that he'll just make you run the other way. If you want him to come and man mark you tight, he's just so sticky. He's so strong. He's so aggressive that I suppose I'm lucky in a way that he's my clubmate, that I don't have to mark him in many matches now. I mark him plenty in training. But in terms of, I think the one who stands out of them all would be Ryan.
I think you've 6 or 7 odd men in the team, but I suppose just to finish up, a final question. If there's a transfer market now at club level in Armagh, who out of your team would you bring into the Ballymacnab team this year to improve it?
Does it have to be an Armagh club player?
No, it can be anybody in your team there.
There's a few. I Any of them, like, you know, sort of like Niall Morgan, you could bring him and he could play midfield. But yeah, I think for, you know, for natural ability and for I suppose being able to play like a number of positions, like I think you would probably transfer Ian Falker. Like I said, he can play any number on the pitch. I suppose maybe apart from goals, and he probably could do it as well if he really wanted. But like just so strong, physically so strong, so powerful, like a really good left foot, a complete athlete. Like will run all day. Like I say, he have him in at number 6. He could play anywhere. Do you know? I know he was playing midfield for Mahari a few years ago. He was maybe the best player in Armagh club football last year, full forward. Yeah, and again, in terms of maybe leadership ability too, seeing him with Armagh, he is a real leader. He's a student of the game. He's always trying to improve himself. And I suppose playing with him in St Mary's too, you know, I've seen his progression. You know, he wasn't always that player. He obviously always had the ability, but he's kind of got the mix and he's getting it right now. So I suppose Eden would probably get the nod there. There's plenty. I would transfer most of them in fairness, but.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us, Jack. That was a good chat. Laying out your dream team, and I suppose every week now we're going to hopefully have a club player on, and we'll be discussing their dream team with them until football returns, basically. Hopefully sooner rather than later. So again, thanks very much, Jack.
Good stuff, Sean. Thanks very much. Hey.